In this module, we're going to take a look at the CDO ASA CLI tool and the macro functionality that supports it. I'm sure all familiar with the CLI from the ASA. Many people use it as their day-to-day operation functionality tool. Some people use it just once in a while, but everybody at some point uses the CLI tool. We wanted to provide that same functionality inside of CDO. So we do that for each ASA. So if you choose an ASA, over here you can click on the command line interface, and this will bring up a command line interface for this device. So I can do show run, include SNMP, and send a command to all these devices, to this device. And I'm going to get the same response back as if I was sitting on the CLI. We're using an API to get there, and we're coming from the internet, so it's a little bit slower. But the response that we'll be getting back is identical to what you would receive if you were sitting on the ASA on the console itself. So I received the response back, no SNMP server location, no SNMP server contact. So the configuration is never reset for SNMP. So I was able to run that enable command, but I can also run configuration commands from here as well. So I'm going to go ahead and set the SNMP on this device. And I'm going to set the location to San Jose, and the contact is going to be the San Jose knock. And I'll send this. And when we're sending this command, we're only writing it to the running config. We're not saving it automatically to startup config because you might be in a position where you're just doing some troubleshooting. You don't want to save it to the startup config in case you need to reboot the box. So once that command is sent, it's successful. We give you the opportunity to write to disk. So when you click write to disk, we're going to go ahead and push that change to the box, to the NVRAM, so it's in the startup config as well. Cool. So now I was able to make a change using the CLI and find the answer. But what's cool now, though, is I can choose multiple ASAs and do the exact same thing. I can use the command line interface at all. So I can do a show run, include SNMP across all 4 of these devices. It could be 40, it could be 400, doesn't really matter how many we could scale out. We're going to run these commands in parallel and get the responses back. So as you can see here, I ran this against 4 devices, but I received 3 responses back. One of my devices is the one I just configured, has the new config on it. 2 of my devices came back with no configuration, and 1 of my devices came back with USA and USA notification. So what I can do now is maybe I want to pick one to keep. Maybe I want all of these devices to have the same SNMP server or SNMP location setting. I can go ahead and select that one from San Jose, paste it in, and send it to all 4 of my devices. And we're going to update the SNMP setting on all 4 of those ASAs. When it's done, again, we've changed the running config, but we haven't saved it. You can go ahead and write that to disk. So it becomes a very powerful tool to be able to do things, not only one per device, but across multiple devices. So you can change things like SNMP v3 keys, add users, remove users. Really sky's the limit as far as like making a change one time, testing it, and then sending it to multiple devices. We've added even another little great little upgrade to this by giving you the opportunity to use and create macros. So by default, we ship with some macros already predefined. So for instance, if I wanted to show the interface names on these devices, I can go ahead and click that. We populate the command, and you can send it to 1 or more devices, and we're going to come back with the if names on those devices. If I expect them to all be the same, then I'm in luck because I got 1 response back. All 4 of my devices have the same interface configuration, the same security configuration, and the same names on those. So that's an example of a macro that is fully formed, and you just click and send. We also have macros that are fully formed but require some input. So this is a macro of logging off a user from a VPN session. So if I have a user that is calling in, they're saying they're having trouble with their VPN, and one of the things you might immediately always do is log them off and then have them reconnect. Here's the command. You click on it, and now all you have to do is click View Parameters and type in the name of the person that you want to kick off of the VPN. So I'm going to kick Derek off, and I'm going to send to all 4 devices. So I don't need to go query the devices to see which one Derek might be logged into. I'm just going to send it to all 4. If he's logged in any of those, he'll be disconnected. It happened to come back that Derek wasn't logged into any of them. But it just shows you the power of how a template could work, a macro could work to help you build quick and easy tools to use in your environment. You can also build your own macro. So previously I ran some commands to create an SNMP server, configure the SNMP. I could turn this into a macro if I wanted to. I could have this command, and I click on this create macro button, and we're going to take the input that you had from this command set. We're going to create a macro from it. So I'm going to create a macro calling it set SNMP. Give it a description. Use this to set location and contact. And use this when things change. So you can put anything in there you want, but it might help your operations team know when to use this macro. So these commands are fully formed. Now I might want to have these be variables. So to turn these values into variables, I can simply put brackets around them and call it location code and then I can also put a bracket around this guy, and I can reuse this value. So maybe it's always something knock. I could turn this into location code knock. So now if I create this macro, I've created a macro, you see it pops in here and it gives you the opportunity to edit it and delete it since it's a user defined macro. So now if I run this macro, all I have to do, just so you can see that I'm choosing it, I set SNMP, I click it, I view the parameters. I have 1 parameter value in here. So I'm going to do Boston, and now it's Boston knock. I can send that to all 4 devices. I could create more than 1 parameter too. Maybe I want to create another macro from here just to prove to you that you could have multiple parameters. I could do location, again, location, and then user to contact. All right, so now I go create that macro. And so when I run this macro, when I view the parameters, now we have 2 different items that I need to fill in. So I can start to create wizards and do things very complex. A site-to-site VPN title, multiple NAT statements, things that you have built in as like scripts inside your operational team. Instead of having them as scripts or text files that you edit, just build them into macros, and then you have parameters here that you're updating and upgrading. So New York, and then I want to contact Bob Hope. And I can send that to all 4 devices, and that'll be updated. So it's just a very flexible way to do things, and then when you're done, of course, write to disk, and those changes will persist and live through an image upgrade. The last thing I want to point out about this is that the change log is keeping track of all this in the background as well. So we can see all these CLI execution changes are happening on my different devices. So ASA 2, for example, if I expand it, I can see that a write mem happened. That's the change log that's open. Sorry. My previous change log on ASA 2 is down here. I can see that the CLI execution happened. I changed the SNMP server location to the device, and I can see who the person was that sent that command in. So you get a lot of visibility into who's running commands on devices, as well as what the response was back when they did write those commands. And this is CDO updating the configuration inside of CDO to keep track of those changes. So as those CLI commands are being pushed in, we're also grabbing those configs back into CDO and calling that the next version of the config. So if you need to recover the configuration, it's not only up to date with all the changes you made in the objects and policies pages, but also from the CLI tool as well. So that's just a demonstration of how to run commands from the CLI, how to create macros, how to run a macro, and then how to monitor and see what's happening using the changelog feature. So I encourage you to experiment with that and try some more complex commands and just kind of work with the functionality to see how that works. Thanks for listening.